Hi, thank you for tuning into the Muraflex demountable wall partition system series of field measuring instructions. In this first segment, we're just going to outline some of the tools that you're going to need to go to field measure your project. First thing you're going to have with you is the Muraflex shop drawing and field measurement sheets. Your basic measuring tools, some more high-tech digital measuring tools, products for determining square lines and offsets, angle measuring tools, ones with the digital readouts that allow you to do on a job site. A string line to extend a line for reference points. We have other types of measuring tools. And you're definitely going to need a 3-axis DeWalt laser measuring tool. This will give you vertical, horizontal, and right angle access. The right angle access is critical for jobs where we have T conditions and L conditions, and we'll get into that in a later segment when we do measuring. Also on a job site, you're probably going to be required to have a safety vest, safety glasses, and a hard hat. And, okay, so that's going to wrap up the first segment. Next segment, we're going to start actually doing a measure. Welcome back to the next segment on Muraflex field measuring. Today, we're going to be demonstrating how we measure a wall-to-wall condition. This condition will happen to have a hinged glass door in it. And I want to talk about our stage here a little bit. We're working in our lab up in Montreal, but we already have some product installed. So for purposes of this demonstration, I want you to imagine that there's no glass here, none of this aluminum is here, this aluminum is not here. What you're going to see in the field for this type of an elevation is you'll have a drywall partition at one end. So when we measure, this will be drywall. When we come up above, there'll be a bulkhead that will be built that will already have the required 2 layers of plywood blocking installed to it, but it will not have any drywall. So it'll be bulkhead with 2 layers of plywood blocking only. We're going to have to make the adjustment for the fact that the drywall is missing. And then on this side, we're going to assume that this is a metal stud framing with the blocking on the inside of it, and we're going to have to make adjustments for drywall. So that sets our stage, and in a moment, we'll get started. So we're here at the elevation that we want to measure. I want to take a look at the floor plans and show you what we're looking at. What we're representing is this room, elevation 9. We have a door swinging against the drywall partition at that end. And then we have a series of glass panels ending against a piece of drywall here. That's also represented on the field measuring sheet page that we provide. Same elevation as here. So to begin with, let's take a width measurement. I typically go as close to the floor, and I'm going to check my corner. Now I've got a dimension of 123 1/8. Now as we discussed, this is metal stud framing, so we have to make an adjustment for the sheetrock that has not been installed yet. Now, this is going to require you to have an on-site meeting with the general contractor, the superintendent, or the drywall foreman. You want to confirm with them what thickness drywall they're using and whether they're going to be using any double layers and then corner bead. So typically, if you have a scrap of drywall, you can just put it in place and you can take your measurement. But we already took the measurement to the metal stud, so we're just going to deduct 3/4 of an inch. I deduct 3/4 of an inch because it's 5/8 drywall, and I allow another 1/8 of an inch for the corner bead and the joint compound. So my measurement was 123 1/8. I'm going to deduct 3/4 of an inch. 122 3/8 is going to be my finished drywall to finished drywall dimension. I'm going to go over to my field measure sheet, and across the top, I'm going to write 122 3/8, and I'm going to note that it's from drywall to drywall. We always record finished drywall dimensions. We don't record metal stud dimensions. You have to make those adjustments in the field. When you're in the field, you get to see everything. When you send these back to us in Montreal, we don't have the opportunity to see what you see, so we ask for the field personnel to make necessary adjustments and give us finished drywall dimension for the width. So now we're going to talk about how we do our height measurements. And our height measurements, we break it up into 2 dimensions. Typically on a job site, your ceilings and bulkheads tend to run more level, and your floors run uphill, downhill with a lot of dips. So we separate it into an upper and a lower dimension. In order to do that, we use our laser and we establish a benchmark line so we know we're starting with a level point. From the level point, then we're going to take our measurements up to the top and then later down to the bottom. And that's all that's required from the field personnel. Once these go back to the shop, Muraflex will take care of adding up the dimensions and coming up with the totals. So you never need to do an overall dimension. So now we want to establish this benchmark line. You're doing a big project and you're going to be moving from wall to wall. We want the upper benchmark number to be set at a multiple of 10 inches. You might be 30 inches down, 40 inches down, 50 inches down from the bulkhead. Whatever multiple of 10 gets you to the height of your laser and somewhere around eye level so you can read accurate dimensions. So here's what we do. So we're going to come over here. Now remember what I said earlier, that the bulkhead up above is our plywood blocking that does not have excuse me, any finished drywall yet. So we have to make an adjustment for 3/4 of an inch of drywall that's going to be added to the bulkhead after we leave here. So I want to determine a benchmark line. If I stretch my tape from the blocking down, 50 inches is in my eye level range. So that's where I want to establish my benchmark, at 50 inches down from the bulkhead. But I want to be 50 inches down from the finished bulkhead. Right now, I'm 50 inches down from the blocking. If I were to bring my tape measure down 3/4 of an inch, then I would be able to mark 50 on my benchmark line. But I don't want to do that. I push it up, and I measure down, and I put a mark at 50 3/4 of an inch. That extra 3/4 of an inch represents the drywall and mud that's going to be added later. So you can see my mark. I'm set at 50 3/4. Now, when I come over here to my drawing, I'm going to write 50 inches. Okay, so we determined that we want our benchmark height to be 50 inches, so now we're going to adjust our laser to it. Now, I keep my laser on an adjustable tripod. So when I turn on my horizontal line, and you can go away from me, go over to the mark on the wall, and I'm going to adjust my laser up until the red line is right on the benchmark that I want it to be at. Okay, so now I know we're 50 inches from here to there. What we want to field measure is every time we have a vertical line in our system, we want to double check the dimension from the laser line up. And I do that supposed to do is take these vertical dimensions. Now we know we've set the horizontal laser at 50 inches down from the bulkhead. So my readings are 50 and 3/4. If I subtract 3/4, that's 50 inches. That's what we said. So that position right there is 50 inches. That was my control dimension for the elevation. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to check every vertical. So approximately here is where the door frame is going to be. So I'm going to measure it, and I got 13/16. If I take off 3/4, I'm going to record 50 and 1/16 of an inch. Now we've got two glass seams, so one of them will be approximately here. Again, I have 50 and 13/16, so I write 50 and 1/16. The next glass seam will be about here. I've got 50 and 7/8. So I'm going to record 50 and 1/8. And at the end, if I go up to the wood, I've got 50 and 15/16. So I'm going to record 50 and 3/16. And field dimensioning goes much smoother if you have a team of two people, where one person is walking, taking the measurements, and the next person is writing them down. So having recorded the upper dimensions, now we'll go back and we'll record the floor variation, or the floor survey as we call it. Now, typically you're going to be standing on a concrete slab. That's what we're going to measure to. Try to make sure your ruler is not in a hole or on top of a bump or something. So I'm going to start right here, and I've got 56 and 7/8. I'm going to write it underneath the elevation, 56 and 7/8. So right around here is where my door frame is going to be. I've got 56 and 13/16. First glass, 56 and a half. Second glass, 56 and a quarter. And all the way at the wall, 56 and 3/16. Now, as I said, you don't have to add up the numbers, but what you do have to do is you have to fill out this box down below that informs us what the field conditions were at the elevation you measured. So that says measurements taken from slab. I mean, this looks like carpet, but we're calling it slab. From the slab to gyprock bulkhead. We already made the adjustment for the drywall, so it's gyprock bulkhead. And these other two lines are information that we have to get from the general contractor, whether we're going to be installing on the slab or installing on carpet, how thick it is, but that's not for the field measurement. And then give us your name and your cell phone number in case we have any questions, we know who to call. And because this elevation has a hinged door, there are two other dimensions that we have to take. We have to take a dimension from the benchmark down when the door is 45 degrees open and when the door is 90 degrees open. We just want to make sure that the door is not going to swing into a high spot that the glass door would hit. So while the laser is still on, we already took this dimension, so we come out here, which would be the door 90 degrees open. And it's too much sunlight here, but we got 57 and an eighth. And at 45 degrees, I've got 57 and a 16th. So I fully opened up here, I write 57 1/8 and 57 1/16. And that takes care of our door swing.